Welcome to the REAL Autism Podcast. Real as in relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions for a better quality of life. Join your host, Alicia Gaucher Page, for some real conversations. Sponsored by J. Cole Autism Coaching.
What's up, everybody? I am your host, Alicia Gaucher Page of the REAL Autism Podcast, where we talk about relevant, effective, actionable living strategies and solutions. You are in for a treat. I'll tell you, as a mother of two children that are autistic, it takes a village. It takes a community to get through your journey. So I have the honor of introducing two of my friends, two of my sorors who are autism champions and mothers as well. And I want them to share their perspective with you today on what their journey was like. So let's welcome to the stage Jessica Daringsburg and Audrey White. Welcome, ladies. How are you today?
Doing great. How about yourself? Thank you.
Doing awesome. So we're just going to jump right in, get right to it, and just tell me a little bit about yourself and share a bit about your family and your child's initial diagnosis with autism. You want to kick us off, Jessica?
Sure. I am originally from a small town called Sunset, Louisiana. I've been married for 33 years. I have three children, wonderful children. My oldest daughter, Lauren, my middle daughter, Sarah, and my very interesting socially delayed son, Jordan. Jordan is the middle child. Lauren is the oldest, Sarah the youngest, Jordan is the middle boy, and he's 31 right now. On high functioning autism. He was first diagnosed with Asperger's. So when he was first diagnosed, was around two years old, when he and my sister's children were playing together. They're all the same age, and I noticed that his development was slower than theirs. Where they were having kind of conversations, Jordan was just mumbling words and not talking, not potty training. And I took him to the Marcus Autism Center to get tested. And he was about 2 3/4, and they at that time said he was NOS, high functioning Asperger's. And it took us for a loop, and it took a while for our family to get acclimated. But now he is a 31-year-old successful meteorologist in Austin, Texas. So it's been pretty good.
Awesome. And we look forward to, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we got from 2.5 years old to now 31 as successful meteorologists, because it hasn't been a bed of roses, of course. So, right. Audrey, tell us about your scenario, your family, and the initial diagnosis.
Absolutely. Audrey White. I am from Kansas City, Missouri. However, I'm an AT alien. I've been here since I came here and went to Clark in the late 80s. And so I, like Jessica, my son, Amon, is 31 years old. He is my oldest child. And then I have a daughter, Riley, who is 23. So Amon is my special child that God just saw fit that I was so strong to handle. And it has been such a journey over the last 31 years. And like Jessica, I went to the Marcus Institute too when he was about, he was more like 4. Okay. And we had a lot of developmentally delayed issues. You mentioned potty training, the verbal, walking, everything was delayed. And we kind of didn't know what was going on, like, oh, he'll catch on, what have you. And then we went to the Marcus Institute, and he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. as well. But he also was intellectually delayed and developmentally delayed. So we had quite a few challenges there, even in the pre-K settings, the daycare settings. He had behavior issues as well. So it was very, very challenging to get him to even be able to remain in a daycare, even like the boys club, and like my friends who had kids his age, I was, watching them go to the boys club or different daycares and pre-K programs, and we couldn't last there. So it was very, very difficult trying to get him settled in a learning environment, as a young child before kindergarten. And then, of course, as soon as we got into the elementary schools, he went straight to special ed, and that is kind of where he matriculated until he was able to graduate, um, and I and that maxed him out at like 22 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is now 11 years in, living in a group home setting with roommates and 24/7 staff, and his maturation has blown us away. He is doing very well. He loves living independently, but of course with a lot of assistance and supervision. But he's really doing well, and I'll tell you about the in between the 4 and the 31 as you asked, Alicia.
So you know what? It's so much to unpack, so I'm gonna try to remember it in what you all just said. But if you as a caregiver, you feel a lot of emotions, first reactions. I know for me, when I was told with Jasmine that she had a diagnosis of autism, my first reaction was, I would describe it as numbness. Because really they didn't have as much information about what autism was then as they do now. And they gave me this laundry list of resources and said, go forth and call all these places. And it was numbness and just feeling overwhelmed. What was you all's first reaction like when you found out?
For me, it was interesting as talking to Audrey, how we went through the different things. Like when we went to what got me to the Marcus Center, first of all, was I kept comparing him to his other cousins, right? They're all within 6 months of each other. And I saw how much they were maturing, and I saw how much difficulty I was having. And I wasn't sure what was wrong. And I kept coming across different kids, and it's like there's something different. I don't know what it is. I had I would say the blessing of a close girlfriend at the time who probably recognized the autism traits before I did. And she put me in a situation at a gathering at her house that said that I met another woman who had 3 sons that were more severely autistic. And she would say, give me scenarios of like, oh, my son only likes to watch the news. He can't watch cartoon. I was like, Jordan does that. My son just lines and he'll sit in a room and not talk with people. And I was like, Jordan does that. And so I said, well, what did you do? And I was like, she said, well, I got him diagnosed at the Marcus Center. And so I was like, okay, I'll think about it. That same weekend, that Monday, I went to my caregiver and I said, I think I'm gonna get Jordan tested. She's like, oh, Jessica, I am so glad you said that, because I went to a caregivers group and was explaining what I was seeing with Jordan. He was eating with his hands. She couldn't get him potty trained. So she was asking advice from caregivers. And they told her to somehow convince me to get him tested. And so that's what got us there. So I had those two cross of paths of people at the same time. I say divine intervention, I guess, for us to recognize probably what I knew in my heart, but I couldn't put into words. So the day that we went through all the tests with the Marcus Center, and we sat down with the social worker and the testers, and they said, Jordan has pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified, which is under the umbrella of autism, because he was actually diagnosed with Asperger's more so when he was 9. I felt relief. My husband cried.
Mm,
And because, your world changed. My
yeah.
world completely changed. So now I had a child, a special needs child. And at the time, I was raising my oldest daughter is my husband's uh, from first marriage. That she is mine, but I raised her since she was 10. So I have uh, my oldest daughter, who had come to, that wasn't biologically mine, but it is mine as if she came out of me now. And then I had the youngest daughter. Well, when Jordan was diagnosed, she wasn't born, but later when she was born, she's also was on the gifted spectrum. And so all those three different scenarios um was in somewhat it was overwhelming. I don't remember if I cried. I probably did. But I went immediately to how can I fix, what do I need to do? How do I need to get him to be able to operate in this world? How do I provide support to my husband who now um, the has the loss of like a father son, the typical father son relationship that he thought he would have, and how do I explain to family how to interact with them, why, what things they can and cannot do, or things they have to consider with Jordan. So all of that, I went into, okay, what is this overall thing that I need to accomplish and make sure he has the best life that I could possibly give him.
Awesome. So I heard you say relief because you found you notice these things and now you have a reason to explain it, but you also there was some element of feeling overwhelmed as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I may not have. I'll like looking back, 27 years now, I probably wouldn't have recognized I was overwhelmed at the time. But now, hindsight, I definitely was. It impacted everything that I did. And
What were your feelings like?
Um, for some reason, I have not the clearest memory, but I remember the struggle being real, and I remember being very hurt. However, my village, I was a single mom when a mom was born, so my village consists of my family, and they are still very, very, very much involved in our lives. Thank God for them. And they really just kind of, even though we were here in Atlanta and most of them are out of state, they were still very, very implemental. And then I have an aunt here who was a special needs teacher in the public school system here. So she really guided me through the schooling thing. But I was really hurt, and I learned that a lot of it, the hurt came from comparing with his peers and very close friends to this day whose sons are, gone and married and have families and all of that. But finally, I took a pivot and learned that you cannot covet what other people have. This is what you have dealt with, and take advantage of the village that you have to support you, and just know that this is your special child and God is going to provide. And it was a lot. It was a lot. And I just remember feeling hurt and sad a lot. And I still get those feelings sometimes to this day. Absolutely, I do. Even some uncomfortable things he may say as a young adult, and I'm like, well, but my family, they get on me because that girl, you better go sit down somewhere. We know of mine. And I remember when I met my late husband, Mike, my family was even like, okay, you gonna marry her? Have you met a man yet? you know, but he's just the most lovable, caring person, and his maturation over the years, and I think a lot of it since living independently. Also, Amon spent a couple of years off and on in the Laurel Heights program, which is downtown, Midtown Atlanta. And that rehabilitated him phenomenally. It's an intensive treatment facility for kids on the spectrum, and you age out, pardon me, at 21. His time there, I mean, he went to school there. It was rehabilitated immensely. I mean, and it was just a game changer leaving there. That's when he came home, wanted to go to a group home. But initially with that diagnosis, it stung. It was so hard. And then I just had to gather myself and realize this is what I've been dealt. And
Play your hand.
Yeah.
There you go. It's good.
Play my hand.
Excuse me. So y'all just throwing so much at me. So I wanted, Audrey, when you said you were a single mom when her mom was born, but your family, they were helpful. So did they naturally just fall into place and were willing to learn and do what they had to do? Because you get different stories from caregivers. Sometimes you get that family who is in denial, or you get that family, like in another podcast I'm doing with fathers, this particular father who is he has 2 children on the spectrum. Essentially his family told him, they just trying to label your kids. It's nothing wrong with your kids. So what was it like, and I'll come to you too, Jessica, after Audrey, but what was it like talking to your family and preparing them for what was about to be a lifetime?
Yeah, again, they were just very open and receptive, even though we have cousins that are Ahmad's age, and again, they're doing their thing and all of that. But as children, they just realize that, they realize that we're gonna have to keep an eye on him because elopement was a thing. He would just, next thing you know, he's outside somewhere, and everybody, but we were always on him. But they were very receptive, which was such a blessing. And just open. They were like, okay, this is what we got. Let's lace up our shoes, roll up our sleeves. This is what we're gonna do. And my parents would have Amon every summer at their home, and then he would go back and forth from Auntie's house. And to this day, he's really a grown, spoiled person.
Your experience getting your family up to snuff.
When Jordan, when Audrey was talking about, like the difference, I remember this poem called Welcome to Holland, where they talks about a parent discovering about being, learning that you're going to be a special needs person. It's like getting on a airplane, which you all excited and you're going to Paris, you packing for everything for Paris, but you don't land in Paris, you land in Holland. And like, you can be very, upset that you landed in Holland because you expected Paris, but you have to realize that Holland was still a great place. It might be a simpler place, a calmer place. It's not like Paris, and you'll never get there, but it's just that, that it's a better place. And so I use that poem and that analogy when I started to tell my family about Jordan and about the diagnosis. Initially, they thought, that boy is either a genius, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just a genius. He's on the cusp of being a genius, nothing wrong with him. And I was like, no, there's something that is different. So when I finally got the diagnosis and being able to explain, I think they were hurt for me. Like they were hurt for me of like, this is something else that I have to deal with. But then they just embraced. Like I said, his cousin, he also would go to my mom's house during the summer. I call it my sabbatical from motherhood. And I mean, he would spend the whole summer there. And one of the things that I had grace to be able to have was that Emory was also doing a session on training caregivers. And so I would take those, I would go to those sessions with parents, and then my caregiver went there. One of my close girlfriends went with me. We took the materials and shared that with my family, my husband's family. And one of the things was that they learned, that we learned was that children on the high end of children with autism and on the high end of the spectrum that Jordan was learned by example. So one of the things is like, you don't have to change. You need to put him all around typical kids. And so around my family with his cousins, he learned from them. And so they embraced, they did not exclude him. I think, I knew that I warned them about, like Artist Point, like make sure that he doesn't run off. You got to pay attention. You have to anticipate what he might do. But either with the family or even at the daycare, when he was around kids his age, he would be able to pick up and learn from them. And so that helped with the village of being able to embrace and learn. And he was reading at 3 years old, right? And so the family was helping him learn, how to read. And then the speech therapist would say, use his ability to read to teach him how to talk, because he also had echolalia as well. And so everything that we learned, my family helped reinforce that, and the caregiver who became just his family helped to reinforce that as well. So it was an interesting dynamic to be able to see and notice the difference of him when he would go there and be around typical kids as he was growing up. So that was pretty good.
So if we had to give caregivers who are just starting this journey three steps on how to manage discussions with family, what would be those 3 points? Because I want to leave my listeners with
some
a strategy
nuggets
or a solution on what they could do as they start out this journey.
Well, one of the things is definitely being empathetic. So there's a difference between it depends on whether or not the family already knows the child is diagnosed and the family does not know, right? That they're not, because that could be both. Sometimes caregivers come across, like my caregiver did, they come across kids that they know something is right, but they're not sure if the parent knows it's right. That, what they've taught is like, don't walk up to them and say, I think your child is autistic. It's you walk up and says, Jordan is not Jordan is not using the fork the way that he should be doing. And I'm having trouble getting him to understand how to go to the potty. Or have you noticed that at home? And then it's like, I've had, and then give an example where I've had similar issues. Have you thought about seeing someone about that? Right. So that's like being empathetic to that person, especially the ones that don't know. And then the other thing is just being patient, and if they've had experience with other kids before, is sharing the testimonies and ideas of what's possible. That this is not but as I think about what Jordan says, it's like, I'm taking the dis out of disability. And it's just different. They just see the world different, and be able to be that listening ear and understand what that parent is going through. You're going to come across, so the empathy is another thing, because you're going to come across folks that are in denial, or you're going to come across folks that are very hurt, and they need that encouragement to do that. And then the other thing would be accepting, like accept that this child, and expect this child to do anything another child in your care is able to do. one of the things is like if you expect the kids, what I used to say is that they're only going to rise to how high the bar you have them, you know, that you're expecting. And for me, I remember sitting in Jordan went through regular school, and he had a special needs pre-K, and then he went through regular kindergarten and elementary with parapro help. But what we said is, I told him, I was like, my expectation is for all of us in this room to be sitting at his high school graduation while he's giving his valedictorian speech. My expectation was high. And so we pushed, and I pushed to ensure that we did everything we could for him to function in a typical world. And so from a caregiver is, you know, have that expectation that the child can do something. Don't, you know, slack back on thinking that they can't. Raise the bar for them to be able to achieve it, and look where they shine. I got plenty of stories where I said did that, but sometimes I didn't believe what that boy did myself. You know, it's just, you know, there's things that just make me just, I'm like, I'm shocked. And then my mom would say, well, you set the bar that high, you know, and so you set the bar that high, and he achieved it. And
so when you say caregiver, just for clarity, are you saying caregiver as in the parent, or caregiver as in someone that supports the family?
Yeah, initially when I started, a caregiver as someone who supports the family. Okay. You know, and then, you know, as a parent, as a caregiver, you know, I do say a lot of it is really the same thing too. As a parent, we have to I would add more, we have to be a little bit more thick-skinned in how society sees our child. Because a lot of times our child doesn't see society that same way. One of the things about autism is that they have they do not intuitively pick up other people's emotions, and so but a lot of times parents would be afraid to take them out somewhere or let them be included in activities because of fear of what other people might say. And I was like, forget what other people might say. If he wanted to do it, I'm going to have him do it. I'm going to work with that organization for him to be able to try it. And I remember he was invited to, and then I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to worry about what other people are saying. I remember he was like probably in second grade or third grade, and he was invited to, it was a classroom birthday party, a birthday party for one of the children in the class, and there was a group of twin little girls, and I could tell they were making fun of Jordan. Jordan couldn't tell they were making fun of him. So if it didn't bother him, I made up my mind it was not going to bother me, and I wasn't going to address it. It was no point, because he didn't understand it at the time. I knew later when he would get older, then we worked through those things. But that's the part where, you know, like, so as parents, I think we need to be able to, we let our own emotions get in the way of exposing our children to the world. And that is one of the things that is very difficult, but it is possible. Jordan played Little League basketball. He played baseball. He played, we didn't let him play football because he couldn't understand about when not to hit. He played soccer. He was in the marching band in high school, choirs, all of that. And all of that was because I wasn't afraid to let him explore what he wanted to do as a parent. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess, Audrey, I want to ask you, because I know you mentioned early in the conversation what you felt was hurt and sadness. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to pull yourself up out of that. Yeah. But as a caregiver, right, we have to, in order to have the conversations that we need to have, whether it be with family, caregivers, school professionals. So, you know, talk to us a little bit about how you got to a better place and how that impacted your relationships that you had with school teachers or whoever it might be as related to a mom.
Yeah, I was just jotting down some notes when Jessica was talking because I think I underestimated Amon, and we enabled him a lot, and to the point where we were just ready to go. So let me put on the seatbelt or let me tie up the shoe because I'm ready to go, and that went well into his past teenage, and we would underestimate him. But I think one thing that's really resonating is that acceptance piece, and just to accept it. And people, my family, I tell you, I keep saying that, and my friends, it was just like, it's okay. The acceptance was there. We didn't get a book. It wasn't a lot of information on autism. It was just kind of like, you just got to roll with it. And it was just like, I was in the boxing ring a lot,
Mm-hmm.
bobbing and
Mm-hmm.
weaving, trying to figure things out. And again, I'm thinking about how I underestimated Amon because I'm like, oh, he's just gonna get in there and cut up because we got kicked out of daycares and you can't really bring him to the boys club. We can't, focus right now. And he tried T-ball, but a lot of that, he was way out in left field and I don't no pun.
Literally.
Yeah.
But and a lot of that sometimes I was kind of like, man down. I can't do this. And I would quite honestly say I don't know if I emotionally can take going to another try to go to another organized sport when I know what they're going to end up telling me when he's over there digging in the dirt and everybody else is running the field or whatever. And over time he grew and matured enough where he loves bowling, so that would be his thing. And I, would venture out and let him do that. But also the patience thing, caregivers. Mine had a great caregiver, which allowed me to, go to work, go out, or do whatever. She would get him on the bus and all of this. But the patience is so key, and just the acceptance,
Yeah.
and
And
no, go ahead.
yeah. And I was gonna say, and the acceptance is not easy, right?
No,
And what I did is like I may talk about it now. It was easy, but Alicia, you know me a long time. It's like I've done a lot of arguing with school teachers, a lot of arguing with things that's like, and a lot of demanding of
yeah,
things where people, thinking that that's not capable and wanting to put him out of a camp because they didn't think that he could handle him, or wanting to change things at the school because he didn't think they could handle them. And I would say, no, no, no. And this is one of the things that parents need to know. Anything that's public out there, you are federally protected.
yeah,
And they are federally obligated to support your child. So it's like, we got to figure this out. And I'll give you there, when Jordan first went to kindergarten at his elementary school, the principal there was giving me a very hard time about how, because I wanted him to have, because he learned from typical kids. So I was like, I do not pull him out of the classroom for his services, like his speech therapy. I want him in the classroom. The therapists come to him, and or I want him to do here's the IEP and all the different things. And sometimes they would get, things would go awry, and she was just so frustrated and about, you got to do something different. And we would get to IEP, and I would explain my point. I explained my point to her, and once I convinced her to come around, oh, she fell in love with Jordan. By the time when she retired years later, he was one of a very few kids she personally requested to be at her retirement party. When people would come to the school, she would bring them to the classroom to see him. But then that was the battle for elementary school. Then, we get to middle, we'd have another battle. They want him to, he would be fighting, or our kids were wrestling, and threatening about getting suspended.
Yeah.
Or a day camp wanted to put him out, and I go and having the conversations like, no, y'all need to understand this. I want him to function in a typical world. And so once we had that strong conversation, very polite but very advocate conversation, I was able to get people to come around. But it's not easy, and to that point, you have to be very thick-skinned. I remember my cousin would say, I don't think I could do that, and that's definitely understandable, and that is understandable and everything, but I always just strongly encourage people to, what is your child going to do when you leave? It's all the different things, what you're going to put in place when you're not here. And you want them to be able to function without you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Real Autism Podcast with Alicia Gaucher Page. We'd like to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this episode: J. Cole Autism Coaching, helping caregivers navigate to a better quality of life; AGP Organizational Coaching, helping people develop effective strategies, systems, and solutions to organize information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or just visit us at jcoleadvocacy.com.